Hey everybody, and welcome back to yet another video about Beth Harmon and her vanquish of the chess world in the 1950s in Netflix's new TV show, Queen's Gambit. Today I bring you to episode 3, Doubled Pawns, in which Beth Harmon first plays in Cincinnati in another state tournament and wins. And finally, at the end of the episode of 1 hour, Beth Harmon visits Las Vegas, in which she disputes in the U.S. Chess Championship. In this championship, she also is very good, very strong. After 4 rounds, she has 4 wins, and in the final, she ends up against U.S. Chess Champion. Let's not forget that this is fictional. Benny Watts. Actually, the actor Thomas Brody Sangster, dressed like a pirate somehow. I don't know how they made that up, but anyways, this character is weird. Anyways, he's good. And yes, they dispute in the final, and I am showing you the game today. So Beth Harmon, as you see on your screen, is playing with the white pieces, and here Benny Watts just played e5, attacking Beth Harmon's rook. Beth Harmon, after the game, explains to her mother how she got trapped in this game and eventually lost. In the game, Beth Harmon played rook g4, and after Benny Watts's rook h1 check, forces king f2, and rook 8 h2 check. This forces knight to g2, and now knight d3, forking the king and rook, winning the game basically, because after the king moves, no options are good, but basically there's a free rook. White can't take back because of simply takes, and this is winning. So Beth got trapped as white here, and should not have played rook to g4. Instead, white have an incredible resource, by the way, that is just mind-blowing and gives them a draw, which she misses in this exact position after e5. Can you find it? It's a long variation, so unless you put this out on a chessboard and analyze it on your own, I don't think you could find it, so let's dive into it. The drawing move here for white is rook to d8, check. And black have 2 options, well, really 3, but this is not a good move at all. So king to g7 and king to h7. Let's look at king h7 first. After king h7, white has bishop c2 check, and this is bad for a couple reasons. If black just plays king g7, well then white has knight f5 check, and whichever square the black king chooses to land on, white is going to have either a discovery on the bishop protecting their rook in the end. So let's say, just for an example, king g6, then white are just going to have knight e7 check, king g7, let's say the king goes back, and either knight takes c6 now, or rook takes h8 first, rook takes, and knight takes c6. So black here is forced to play e4. The pawn is protected well, so there's no fear here for white taking it. White have actually another resource here. Rook takes h8. And after king takes h8, rook b8 check. And this forces the king to move up. And after the king does, white have a winning move here. Simply rook c8. After rook c8, there's not much black can do to save the bishop or knight, and they have to forfeit one of the pieces. So this is a winning variation. And so knowing this, why is king h7 bad? It's because it lets white take the bishop off the b3 square and land it on the c2 square with tempo, and now black can't take the bishop on b3 anymore. So let's say that there was not this resource and white just took here first. This tactic would now not work anymore because black could take the bishop on b3. And so that's the entirety of why king h7, a minor difference from king g7, is completely terrible. Also, king h7 just lets white take, and the black king has to take back. Whereas the good move, the drawing move, king g7, white takes, and now black can have the liberty to take back with the rook on h8. And so the sensible move is king g7 here. After king g7, white have the beautiful move knight f5 check, perfectly in the axe of the attack. Now black has two possible moves here. King g6 is not good, as we saw before, because of simply takes, and the fork here, bishop and king, winning the bishop. So after knight f5 check, black are forced to move king h7. And here is the variation that I love that Beth Harmon could have played in the game. White to move and absolutely find a mind-blowing draw. I mean, I was astounded when I saw this. White have the little resource, g6 check here. Basically hinting at the king once again, you can take my pawn, but you can't really, because as we saw, king takes g6, well, there's just the exchange and knight e7. So this forces black to come up with another option, the f takes g6. And what this does is that it forces black to make a fortress around himself. So this pawn acts against black, in that it traps the king from escaping these three squares. So after f takes g6, rook takes h8, forces king takes h8, and now rook b8 check, king h7. Mind you, the knight is always in a takeable position, so white can't just go on and play bishop c4, for example, would be a losing move due to g takes f5. So after king h7 here, bishop g8 check. And as I said, the g6 pawn is doing bad for black, as it's blocking the king from escaping this little trap zone. King h8, and now white could do a move like bishop d5 check, but this is not very winning because king h7, bishop takes bishop, and just g takes f5, and this is actually just a bit winning for black. Black have a little advantage here, so this is not in white's interest. So after king h7, well, then we just have a 3-move perpetual that can go on any way and anyhow. White can just play on this diagonal here, and the black king will always be trapped no matter what. And there's, sadly for white, not one single good discovery check that would win the game for them, believe it or not. So yeah, this is how Beth Harmon could have found a brilliant draw here as white in this position, instead of playing rook g4, which loses on the spot. The second I saw this in Queen's Gambit, I was so sad for her, because this is the final of the US Championship. This never happens, that you get this far, unless you work so hard in chess. And to see all that effort go away with a rook g4 move, blunder, basically, allowing check and basically the fork here, is very sad to see. And you can see it in Beth Harmon's face when she described the game to her mom. She was really upset about it. But she still won the US Championship, tied for first place with the black pieces here, Benny Watts. So it's not all bad. I know that the end of the third episode was quite sad, but Beth Harmon was actually playing some really good chess in Las Vegas. So that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Feel free to sub and like and share. I would really appreciate it if you did. This helps support my channel and makes me make more videos, believe it or not. So see you next time, and peace.